Hi everybody, this is another colouring tutorial and today we're going to do something that lots of you have been asking for quite a long time, and that's how to do a pastel background. So something that looks a little bit like this. Oh, I've got the windows open today because it's really hot. So this is done with chalk pastels. I'm going to be using these Staedtler chalk pastels here. I'll take the lid off so you can see. They look like this. So some people would use like a pan pastel, which is a single little pot of a flat colour. Other people prefer these sort of like sticks. The most important thing is that you don't use an oil pastel or something that's like a wax crayon. It has to be this chalky kind of one. You will also need, as well as the artwork that you're working on, some cotton wool. I prefer these little like cosmetic pads, the kind that you would use for taking your makeup off, although a cotton wool ball is fine. And then for the very little bits, I would use, we call this a cotton bud, but in America it's a Q-tip. And lastly, you will need a scalpel or a blade, please be very careful, and a razor, and some fixative. There's a little fly in the studio just now. We'll see if he's going to buzz away. So with fixative, you can either use a proper artist fixative spray that you get in the art store, or I often just use hairspray because it's the thing that I have kicking about, and I wouldn't usually have a tiny little one. I think I had that at the airport. There you go. And then lastly, chalk pastels are messy, so I always have a wet cloth just to wipe my fingers on, and then a dry one to dry them off, because otherwise you can get a lot of contamination of colour and little fingerprints and things. That fly is going to annoy me, so I'm just going to open the window a little bit more and let him out. But next up, we'll do the tutorial. Okay, so I'm going to colour a page from Magical Jungle, and I'm actually going to do one of the pull out perforated prints at the back, the elephant, because I think when you're starting off with pastels, it's a good idea to pick a shape that is quite simple in terms of an outline. You don't want something really intricate just to start off with. So we'll do the elephant first. So grab your first colour. I'm going to use this sort of orangey yellow, and also your blade. Please be really careful, these are super sharp. What you're going to do is hold your pastel above the page and just gently start shaving bits of coloured dust off your chalk pastel and onto the white bit around your picture. Don't worry if you go over the elephant a little bit, I'll show you how to clean him up in a wee minute. Also, like when you're colouring with pencils or pens, you might get a bit of smudge, so work left to right if you're right-handed and right to left if you're left-handed. So that's a nice little bit of dust over everything. We'll do this side first and then this side. Now grab your cotton wool. I think these pads are a little bit easier to control than just a cotton wool ball, but if you prefer a cotton wool ball, that's fine. I like to fold it up like this, and then you're just going to use it to sort of push the colour into the paper and smoosh it about a bit. I've seen pictures that people have shown me where they've used eyeshadow to do roughly the same thing, and it looks amazing. It's definitely something that I'm going to try it for another video. You get some really bright colours, probably from some pretty bizarre eyeshadow palettes, but they're also glittery, which works really nicely. So you can get a bit of a shimmer to it. If you get a bit like that, just keep going over it until you buffer away any big strong lines. And then as you get towards the edge of the elephant, again, don't worry if you go over him a little bit. You can sort that out later. So just keep putting the dust onto the picture and smooshing it about with your cotton wool until you've got the whole of the picture covered in a sort of mottled layer of yellow. Okay, so once you have your base yellow layer all completed, I like to go over it with a little bit of a darker colour and just sort of add a darker area around this outer edge, almost to make it look as if the outside edge is a little bit more crimson, and as you get closer to the elephant it's lightening up to the goldy yellow. Also, if you've got bits like this where it's maybe a little bit darker, just pop a bit of red on it and blend it in. I think the nice thing about chalk pastels is it doesn't create a flat layer of finish like you might expect to see if it was coloured digitally. It's a lot more mottled. Now for this one, I'm going to use a cotton wool ball just to sort of buff in this red. A bit like if you were applying powder or blusher for ladies that wear makeup. Now I think I'm going to make this a little bit more red down here. And there you go, that's the first layer of colour all down. Your cotton wool goes these nice colours. So next step, I am going to lift this up very gently because this colour isn't set yet. I'm going to turn over that white sheet that I've been working on, and I'm going to give my hands a bit of a clean so that I don't contaminate the colour, and dry them off as well. If you touch chalk with wet hands, it's going to leave fingerprints. So now I just need to tidy up the areas where the chalk has gone over the elephant when I'm going to colour. You could just try and colour straight over the chalk, but it's going to contaminate the colour a little bit, so you're better to colour all on the same background colour, which would be the ivory. So get a very clean eraser. This Staedtler one is perfect. If it's a little bit dirty, you can clean it off or just use your scalpel to trim it. And then try not to touch the picture too much with the chalk spin down. Hold it in place and just use your eraser to lightly lift off anywhere the chalk's gone that it shouldn't be. Try not to put your fingers onto the chalk because every time you touch the chalk you're going to lift a little bit off. Also, don't worry if you lift off a bit of chalk where you want the chalk to be. I'll show you how to put that back in a minute. Okay, so that's all the chalk cleared off, but there are a few little bits where I've lifted off chalk where I actually do want it to be. So I'm going to grab a cotton bud or a Q-tip and just put a little bit on straight from the chalk pastel and just use that to shade in the white area. So put a little bit of chalk down and then just move it around. I wouldn't worry too much about imperfections at this stage, because you have to remember this is just the background, and once you start adding the rest of your colour and working in your colouring pencils or pens, this actually fades away, and you know, it sort of, well, it fades to the background, and the thing that becomes most prominent is your colouring. So next step, let's get outside and spray this with some Fix-It. So there you go, that is a really quick way to lay down a background colour using chalk pastels. We've just stepped outside and I used my little can of hairspray to fix it in place. So chalk pastel is going to move about unless you fix it. So you can use hairspray or use like a proper chalk or charcoal fixative spray from like a hobby store or an art store. The most important thing is, do not use a glossy finish spray. It has to be matte, because you still want to be able to go over and add all your coloured pencil to this. So if you use anything that's gloss finish, it kind of puts a coating on it that makes it really difficult to then colour. Also, if you have a UV spray that you've been using on your canvases just to seal them off, not the same thing. Don't try and use that. It really has to be a matte finish fixative or some hairspray. So I quite like the fact that you don't have much control over chalk pastels, especially when you're doing it with the cotton wool. It means that your backgrounds are all going to be very tactile and bespoke and different, and I like the little nuances that it gives you when you have that effect. But it is a really great way to lay down some colour and just to have that lifted background, I guess, so that your artwork becomes more of a whole piece of artwork rather than just a single colouring on a white sheet of paper or an ivory sheet of paper. But I would love to see how you tackle pastel backgrounds. If you want to upload your pictures to my colouring gallery, that would be amazing. If not, pop them on social media and use the hashtag my name so that I can find it, so hashtag Johanna Basford. And thanks very much for watching. I hope you've got a little bit of inspiration from today's video, and I look forward to seeing your creations. Happy colouring!